I've just entered the Half Ironman in Tauranga to be my first pro race. So I've decided to meet with my coach David, who just happens to be the brains behind Velogic Fit, to see how we can get some free speed. Thanks for meeting with me, David. I know this is going to be a big ask, so I've got your hot chocolate to try and scoop you up.
Cool.
So what's the plan?
We know that you performed well last year, and that getting faster than the bike you've already got is going to be a bit of a struggle. So we're going to need to focus on raising your power, which we've been doing the last few months, and then aerodynamics, which starts with bike fit, because there, like I said, there are very few differences we can make with the equipment. So I think the next step from here would be to pop into the office and work on the fit bike to see if we can find a position.
So we're in the fitting room, and the goal is to make me faster. How are we going to do it?
We're going to use 3D motion software, which will analyse your biomechanics. We use our 3D Aero software, which measures your frontal area, and we're working on an adjustable fit bike that's already been set up to match your Giant. So that would be taking your existing position as the baseline and working from there. And over the course of the session, we'll refine just step by step until we come up with a solution that is both fast and comfortable compared to what we have now. We've just done his baseline position and sitting up position. The point of the sitting up is to capture what his body motion looks like when he's completely unconstrained at the hips. So we're seeing we've got pretty good agreement with the knee lateral travel and the knee path, which is that diagram there. Shoulder lateral travel very similar. So he's got very good stability in his current position, which we hope so because we've worked on it in the past. We're not in alignment that he has moved back a bit on the saddle when he's set up, which is fairly typical. But we'll be using this as the indication going forwards that if we start to see big changes in his stability, particularly the knee travel, then we'll know that we're starting to compromise his range of motion. So George, where we landed in your bike fit was a position that saved us about 0.02 in the CDA, which corresponds to 5 minutes over 90 kilometres.
Sounds good to me.
The bad news is that the position we got to, we can't match that onto your Giant Trinity.
So what does that mean?
Well, I'm willing to offer you a deal that I will put together a bike for 1,000 US, 1,500 New Zealand, that will hit that position and you will race on it in a total and a half.
So I've wasted all my money on a super bike.
In a word, yes.
Well, I think I'd be silly to give away 5 minutes, so if what you're saying is true, I'd be keen to give it a crack. I think we've got a deal.
Okay, let's get started.
So I've just come in from training to find a message on my phone from David telling me that he's managed to find a bike that'll fit. So I'm pretty keen to get into the office and find out what he's managed to get his hands on. Don't tell me that the bike's that embarrassing you've had to cover it with a curtain.
No, I thought I'd use my bright pink curtain for dramatic effect. Are you ready to see the bike?
No, whatever.
The Cervelo P3C was released in 2005 and production ran through into 2012, during which time it was the dominant timed race bike across the world for both time trial and triathlon, racking up wins, sometimes not even labelled as Cervelo, but for Tour de France, World Championships, Ironmans. It propelled Cervelo to being the number one bike at the Ironman Hawaii for age groupers, a dominance that they've maintained since. It has been copied and followed by many brands, some even going to the extent of scanning the tube shapes of the P3 to define the design of their new generation bikes. So while it's now an older design, it's still extremely fast and has been extremely successful. So we're not concerned about risking George's prospects by using older but still very good technology.
Well, considering we had $1,500 to spend, it's not as bad as I thought. I thought I was going to be on an absolute clunker. But I can already ride it about 40 k's an hour on my Giant, so how's this going to be any faster?
The problem with your Giant isn't the bike itself, it's that we couldn't get you into this best possible position. The Giant's been extremely successful for team time trial. They've won both men's and women's and the individual race in men's last year. The Trinity is an extremely well-designed bike on the aerodynamic front, but in your case, we've run against the limitations of the handlebar setup, and that has held true for many other riders who I've been working with on superbikes. So what we'd like people to understand from this is that a superbike is fine if you have first defined your position and you've had time to adapt to it, and you know that your best possible outcomes can be achieved in a given position. Then you search for a superbike that matches, rather than purchasing a bike purely on the basis of claimed speed and then accommodating your position to suit what it can achieve.
So is this thing rideable yet?
Mostly. There's still a few changes that I need to make to get it to suit your position. Obviously with any second-hand bike we're at the mercy of what it originally came with, so we'll be selling off parts, buying new ones to get it tailored to what you need and to hit the budget.
Time to go and take it for a spin.
Fair enough.
So you can probably see that the bike looks a bit different. Luckily it came with some Mavic Cosmic Carbons on it, but we thought money was better spent elsewhere. So we managed to sell them for about $700, which gave us some more budget. So we managed to pick up this SRAM S80 front wheel for not a lot. And at the moment we're using this Profile 78 carbon wheel on the back because it's got the power tap, so we can actually do some testing with power. We managed to find some cranks that were older than I am, so we just got some old Dura-Ace cranks and got the ends cut off at a local engineering shop. So now I've got around 150mm cranks. We took the front derailleur off. Now I'm running single ring, so it's no good for any course other than a pancake flat one like Tauranga. We've upgraded to 11 speed with this new 105. We really need to cut this off because it looks a bit hubbardy, and we've got a new longer stem, new aero bars and new pads.
How did it feel?
It's different. Because of the shorter cranks, I feel like I'm pedaling tiny little circles, and the seat height actually feels like it's higher. But obviously it's different, but it feels good.
And the bars?
It feels like I'm almost on the front wheel, but the cups are like nice and supportive, so it's real steady, and I feel like I'm locked in.
Doesn't feel fast.
Oh, we'll have to see.
This year's race, you went just on 2:15. This year we're aiming for around 2:08, 2:07, 2:08 being the requirement for riding in the lead pack. So we've been working hard on your power, that's come up a bit, and now this position, we've already determined that this should save you up to 5 minutes. And we've got a few other ways that we're looking for you to get faster. If you were to drop 2 kilos from yourself or the bike, or a combination, that would make a difference of 8 seconds, which is minimal. If you were to change to a more advanced chain lube system, then we're still looking at seconds for most of them. If we go to the best possible chain lubing solution, then we'd be saving probably 50 seconds. So that's something that we will be looking at doing, because that's part of the overall picture. If you were to increase the power that you put out for the race, so add another 10 watts, that makes a difference of a little bit over 2 minutes. So the answer to how to go faster is always more power, but in most cases there's a limitation on how much more you can do, so we need to look at aerodynamics as the primary source for that. Several of our equipment decisions have been driven by the course itself. For instance, using a single chainring is more aerodynamic and a little lighter, but obviously it can restrict your gearing somewhat unless you're prepared to deal with large steps in the gears. Because this course is so flat, we've set George up with a very large chainring, which will also optimise the friction from the cassette, and this will allow him to pedal at his normal cadence at around 250 watts to ideally give him a speed of 43-44k an hour.
In today's video, we're looking at some of the factors to do with the race, like power. This bike has been specifically designed for the Tauranga course with some quite hard gearing, so we thought we'd give it a crack and try and get up a big hill. That's it. I'm done. It's going max. I could barely turn the pedals. There's probably still like 5 corners, you reckon?
For this exercise, our main goal is to make you faster, predominantly through bike fit, because that's where you can get the largest aerodynamic gains. But there's a few other things that we need to discuss as part of being faster, or as just part of what makes it difficult to compare one year's race to the next. First on the list is power. You've been training well over the last year. On the half Ironman on the weekend, you were 20 watts higher than what you did at Tauranga at the beginning of the year. Do you feel that that hilly course power will translate well to the flat course at Tauranga?
I was on the Trinity for the weekend in Rotorua and I felt really strong, so even in my power from this year versus when I rode the same course last year, even that was up significantly. So hopefully, as long as I don't drop the ball come Tauranga, I'll be able to be stronger.
Cool. Next element to consider is that you're going from age group racing, where you were right at the front of the swim and you cleared up pretty quickly on the bike, so you got to ride your own race the whole way. Moving into the pro ranks, the goal is to make the swim pack, and that then means that you start the bike quite hard. You have to make a choice between staying at your power and losing the pack, or going somewhat above your power to stay with the pack. They do settle down after a bit of time, but for all of our calculations, it does make it a bit more difficult to isolate exactly what came from you being more aero, more efficient, versus what came from pushing yourself to go harder in the pack. That's something that we'll plan a bit more up closer to the time.
How are we able to measure exactly what has come from bike fit and aerodynamics versus what's going to come from pushing more watts and trying to hang on their wheels?
Well, obviously, I'll be doing post-analysis of your files, comparing each year with each other. We've got another factor to consider before we get to how we're going to compare, and that's the course difference. So in my beautifully drawn diagram here, last year's course came out and did the Y shape at the end. This year's course stops around here. Now, on my modelling so far, it looks like this year's course will be slightly slower, but for last summer they had resealed sections out here which slowed the course down by a couple of minutes. So losing that should mean that this year's course is fractionally faster and a bit nicer to ride because you won't be bumping through the chip seal. Once we've taken those factors into account, then the only way for us to be sure of what the actual difference in your setups is from one year to the next is for us to do a time trial in controlled conditions.
So what's the plan there?
We take you to some quiet country roads and you ride around.
So that would just be going out, finding a loop, riding one bike at one power, swapping over and riding the same bike at the same power?
Yes, simple as that.
I'm excited to see whether I can actually ride this new bike in that position and how they actually feel one after the other.
That's not a factor we consider too much as your feelings about it, but yeah, we'll do that too. So what we're here for now, George, is to test these bikes head to head. We're going to do a time trial on your Giant, and then we'll swap the wheels over so that we've got the same tyres and the same power readings, and we'll do the same test on P3C. And that will give us a baseline for whether you're actually faster in the wheel world. This isn't a true time trial where you'd be going as hard as you could for the duration. It's just going to be ride at 280, so above your half Ironman power, but not all out, so that way you can be repeatable and consistent.
Sweet.
The course we have chosen for the TT loop is around 8 kilometres long and flat throughout. There are a couple of corners George will have to negotiate, but we have chosen quiet roads to minimise any interruptions and maintain consistency between the two test rides. bang on 300 watts and 100 RPM, which gave you a pretty decent kind of speed. So now we'll switch some things over and repeat the effort. Your power was fractionally high on average. The cadence was a little higher, which we'd expect given that you've gone to shorter cranks. Your time, but it's looking like it was a good, consistent effort. How did you feel about it?
Positive, like it felt faster. So that's always, if you feel fast, it's a good thing. I mean, it was absolutely different. Decided to keep riding and get more comfortable.
This is real world riding, this is what happens, so we've got some good information out of this. Obviously now you need to go and spend some more time on this bike and get used to it so that you can ride 90k rather than 7.5.
The point of these videos is to try and make me as fast as possible on the bike, but obviously I've still got to race a triathlon. So to stay consistent with last year's effort, I'm still going to try and run as fast as I can off the bike. So today, David's going to tell us what you need to consider when setting up a time trial for a triathlon. How's it going, David?
Not too bad, George. How was your run?
Not too bad.
On the topic of running, one of the things that we need to consider for this whole exercise is that it's a triathlon. It's not as simple as just a time trial on the bike. You need to make sure that you don't come off and run 150 because the standard is somewhere under 120. So when we did the fit, we were working on not cramping up your hip angle. We used the 3D motion software for that.
So is that why we went for the really, really short cranks?
That was part of it. So the shorter cranks open your hip angle by 3 degrees, which meant we didn't compromise so much when we lowered the front of your bike. A lot of people talk about various ways of helping your running off the bike. The only thing that makes a difference is by not overexerting yourself. So what we're aiming for is there is a speed requirement, and we know that for your threshold there's a certain intensity you can work at to have the bike out of TSS to still be able to run. And so we're trying to reduce everything on the demand side of that equation so that you go fast enough for the power you've got, rather than the approach of riding as hard as you can and hoping.
Yeah, because there have been a few comments online saying, are you just going to ride as hard as you can?
No.
Yeah.
The goal for you is to get better as a triathlete. If we're only interested in your bike time, you do the team leg. So it's very much around, you've got a TSS budget, you have to spend it wisely so that you've got enough left for the run to execute a good overall race.
A lot of people talk about cleat position and other things around how to run off the bike. Is there much to that, or?
We've got your cleats as far back as possible, which is about all that can be done to reduce the loading on your lower leg. But there are a lot of elements that people talk about which is kind of supposed to be magic, that you use less of this muscle or more of that muscle, and really it all just comes down to, on a time trial bike you can be 5k an hour faster than a road bike, so you go faster for the same effort and then you're a little bit pressure for the run. The other thing is to have been doing enough running, which we've been working on for the last year, and we've got some good signs on that front, but still some work to be done in the remaining few weeks.
Right, how do you get on with it? So it's race week. I've had the bike over the Christmas break and I've had a chance to put some training on the bike, and I also got to race it at the Surf Breaker over in Tauranga, and it was pretty good. I managed to ride over all the speed bumps and not drop the chain, which was going to be one of our big issues going into a single ring. So at this point, everything's feeling pretty good. I've done the training, and the questions have been asked since the last video, and the people want to know, has the new position on the $1,500 bike made me any faster?
Well, having done some of the training with you, sitting on your wheel, I'd definitely say that it's made you extremely slippery and hard to draft. From that time trial we did, we got a 17-second difference over 7.65k, so that equates to around a k per hour. That's a pretty significant change, which has come from your position aerodynamics. Changing the bike was just to support that position. That time trial, that was your first exposure to this position, so what we're looking for is that when it comes to race with this extra experience, that's when we'll see the full benefit of what we've done. Now, for race day, there's been a few other things that we've done. In terms of the changes we've made to the bike, going from the front back, obviously we've now only got one shifter, and we've equalised the height as much as possible for George's comfort. The extensions were chosen to give a comfortable wrist angle that we tested in his fit. We're using the Profile Design race armrests, which lock you in position a bit more tightly and support the kind of position that George is in. We switched to a much longer and slightly negatively angled stem to get the reach that we required and drop the bars down. Using that stem allowed us to use a cheaper aero bar bracket than we would have otherwise, because the ones that offer lower stack are somewhat more expensive. Swapped out the headset top cover for a lower stack version. Front wheel, we've picked up a repaired carbon wheel that's given us really good speed for a limited budget. Knocked off the front derailleur hanger because that was superfluous to our requirement and actually add quite a lot of drag. For the cranks, we've got these rather old school Shimano Duros cranks, shortened them to 150 millimeters to suit George's position and open up his hip angle. Along the way, we also fitted a narrower bottom bracket axle than the cranks are intended for, and that's reduced the stance width for George, which is also slightly more aerodynamic. We've swapped out the saddle. The original one didn't really suit him, and we know that the ISM does work for him. The chain is just a standard Shimano, but we've thoroughly cleaned it in an ultrasonic degreaser and then boiled it in wax, which saves us a couple of watts. The rear derailleur has been switched out to 11 speed, and 105 derailleurs come with a lower end bearing in the jockey wheels, so we've upgraded those jockey wheels to ones that offer a full bearing, which saves around a watt. And for the rear wheel, we are fitting plastic disc cover that we've made from sheet, and that when paired with just a standard rear wheel gives you all the speed of a full carbon disc. As far as the budget goes, we have run over by about 5%, which is acceptable given the amount of things that we've managed to fit into that budget. There was a cost to cutting the cranks down, switching to 11 speed made it easier for us to do a one bike conversion. We haven't really scrimped on any part of this bike, so pretty satisfied with that. We have been quite lucky as well in that some of the estimated sale prices for old parts we exceeded compared to our partway budget that we showed earlier in the series, and that's helped us a lot in terms of being able to do all the things that we wanted to do. As the bike sits right now, we haven't put on the race tyres, and we still need to fit the rear wheel that we'll actually be using. We've based our budget on having purchased just a standard training wheel and fitting a disc cover, but for the purposes of our comparison, we're actually using an existing PowerTap wheel so that we get power data, but effectively the wheel is the same speed as if we just used a standard Shimano RS training wheel. What our budget hasn't included is a factor for the labour time and some of the expertise required to have done this. Knowing how to get cranks cut, how to file back the tabs so that they don't hit the frame, how to repair wheels, waxing chains individually. There's significant cost savings that have come in this bike build just based on the expertise that we have in-house. So if you're looking at this budget yourself, you're probably going to need to allow for having someone else assist you with this. Homemade disc covers, waxing chains on the kitchen stove, these aren't necessarily things that people should be doing without prior experience. So George, I've invested quite a lot in you with this project, providing you a bike, letting you do your time trials at my pool, giving you a training program. Now it's up to you on the weekend.
Well then it sounds like it's just as much a test of you as it is me.
Let's find out. So George, how did you feel about your first pro race?
I was surprised. Going into it, didn't think that I probably would have done as well as I ended up doing. And coming into T2 with people that I've raced in the past and never thought I'd be coming into T2 with was a pretty cool feeling. I'd be interested in how much of that actually came from the new bike.
Firstly, I'm disturbed by a lack of faith, but moving on to your race performance, went really well. You moved up from 13th to 5th. Last year you were 25 minutes behind the winner, this year 12 minutes behind, so relative to the field, pretty significant improvement. You did ride the target time. We were aiming to get down to 208 and you rode a 208.03, so we've ticked off all the boxes. It is worth noting that the new course was faster, but then the environmental conditions were slightly worse with a bit stronger wind and a bit lower temperatures. Overall, the changes allowed you to ride the target time with only a small increase in power. We had to factor in putting out a bit higher power than that, which was probably then a factor in you running nearly 10 minutes faster. So overall, a much faster package thanks to the work we've done. Now, of course, the running, probably an element of that is another year's experience, a bit more racing, a bit more training, but in the end, our goal was to make you faster, and we've certainly done that. Looking at the results in the context of our project, we did show that bike position was the most important for aerodynamics, that we in some ways downgraded your equipment relative to what you had last year, and you still went faster. On the note of the Trinity, both the men's race and the women's race were won by riders on Giant Trinities, with customised parts in the aero bars to get a good position, but certainly there's nothing wrong with that bike in the general sense. The point of our budget limited project was to show that by focusing on position, getting the key things right, you can be competitive without having a super bike. And despite your surprise at how well that worked, I think it's definitely been a worthwhile demonstration of that principle. Our goal is efficiency. You've got to get to the finish line as fast as possible. And in this case, that meant that you didn't necessarily ride as fast as you could have. You rode as fast as you needed to for the race, and then ran as fast as you could. So, what are you going to ride for your next race?
It's a bit of a tough one, because next I'll be racing Challenge Wanaka, which is I think a notoriously hard course, and currently with the single ring, I don't think I'd even get around it. So I think it's back to the drawing board, and we might have to do the Project 2.0.
Well, we can certainly repurpose this bike, maybe add some gears since you're not man enough for the 55 single ring. The next step is to find the balance. This was very much a bike tailored for going fast on the flat in a relatively straight line. So we might need to find a little bit of a compromise for the future. As far as takeaways for anyone watching this, very few people are going to get into the same kind of position. We'd worked on your position for a couple of years leading into this, which gave you more freedom to adopt a very low position. It's also not realistic for every rider to be doing a single front ring with the massive gear, making a disc at home. There's a few parts of this project that aren't generally applicable. But what is applicable is the principle that if you want to get faster, you need to focus on efficiency, get your position as aerodynamic as it can be without sacrificing comfort and power, make the equipment changes that fit within your budget and will have the most impact. Rushing straight to buying ceramic bearings or dithering over which aero helmet you should get, generally not the first places you should start. Go for position, go for tyres, go for the big things, and train, of course, because more power always helps. In my example, riding in the team, the fastest team rider put out 70 watts more than I did. It's quite hard to overcome that. So for our viewers, the takeaway that you really need from this is get your bike bit sorted, and that will help more than anything else you can do.